What if modern society creates most human suffering? What if anxiety, stress, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion are not natural, but consequences of endless desire? Humans spend entire lives chasing money, status, validation, comfort, recognition. Yet despite all this pursuit, many remain deeply unhappy. Why? Perhaps because modern civilization teaches people to need too much. Few philosophers challenged society more radically than Diogenes. A man who abandoned wealth, rejected social norms, mocked powerful people publicly, and searched for freedom through simplicity. Tonight, we explore Diogenes' philosophy of suffering, desire, attachment, social illusion, and the possibility that freedom begins when humans stop needing so much. Part 1: The Philosopher Who Rejected Civilization. Diogenes lived unlike almost anyone else in ancient Greece. While others pursued status, wealth, reputation, intellectual prestige, Diogenes rejected nearly all of it. He reportedly lived inside a large jar or barrel, owned almost nothing, and deliberately embraced discomfort. To many people, he appeared insane. But Diogenes believed society itself was insane. Humans exhausted themselves endlessly pursuing artificial desires, luxury, recognition, comfort, approval. Meanwhile, they lost freedom completely. Part 2: Why Humans Suffer. Diogenes believed suffering often begins with attachment. People become emotionally dependent on possessions, reputation, social acceptance, comfort. And once dependence forms, fear appears immediately. Fear of losing status, fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of poverty, fear of discomfort. Modern society intensifies this constantly. People compare themselves endlessly through social media, wealth, appearance, public success. And because identity becomes tied to external validation, psychological suffering increases continuously. Diogenes believed humans create prisons for themselves through desire. Part 3: The Philosophy of Cynicism. Diogenes belonged to the philosophy of Cynicism. But ancient cynicism differed greatly from modern negativity. The Cynics believed humans should live according to nature rather than artificial social expectations. They valued simplicity, honesty, self-sufficiency, freedom from excess desire. Diogenes believed civilization often corrupts natural human life. People become obsessed with luxury, etiquette, image, competition, yet internally remain anxious and emotionally fragile. Why? Because dependence creates vulnerability. The more a person needs externally, the easier suffering controls them psychologically. Part 4: The Fear of Discomfort. Modern humans fear discomfort intensely. Silence feels uncomfortable. Boredom feels unbearable. Loneliness feels terrifying. Why? Because modern society conditions people toward constant stimulation and comfort. Diogenes deliberately trained himself to tolerate discomfort. Cold weather, hunger, simplicity, public embarrassment. He believed resilience grows when humans stop depending entirely on comfort. A person emotionally destroyed by inconvenience is not psychologically free. And perhaps modern anxiety partly emerges because humans became too dependent on comfort and approval. Part 5: Social Performance. Diogenes despised social performance. He believed many people spend their lives acting, pretending, Performing acceptable identities publicly. Humans fear judgment constantly. So they hide authentic thoughts and emotions behind social masks. Modern social media intensified this dramatically. People curate identities continuously. Perfect images. Perfect lifestyles. Perfect personalities. But behind performance, many remain emotionally exhausted. Diogenes believed authenticity requires rejecting artificial social expectations. Not to isolate from humanity entirely, but to stop living for approval. Part 6: Freedom through Simplicity. Diogenes believed freedom emerges through needing less. A person dependent on luxury becomes controlled by luxury. A person dependent on approval becomes controlled by public opinion. A person dependent on status becomes trapped by comparison. But someone who requires very little becomes difficult to control psychologically. This idea remains powerful today. Modern consumer culture constantly encourages humans to desire more. More success. More possessions. More stimulation. More recognition. Yet desire rarely ends permanently. Satisfaction fades quickly. And the cycle continues endlessly. Diogenes believed simplicity interrupts this cycle. Part 7: The Courage to Live Differently. Diogenes lived radically because he believed most humans fear authenticity. People conform because individuality creates risk. Social rejection. Embarrassment. Isolation. But Diogenes openly challenged authority and convention. He mocked hypocrisy publicly. Even powerful individuals. According to legend, when Alexander the Great visited him and offered anything he desired, Diogenes simply replied, "Stand out of my sunlight." Whether historically accurate or not, the story symbolizes his philosophy perfectly. A person who desires little becomes psychologically independent. Part 8: What modern society gets wrong. Diogenes would likely criticize modern civilization intensely. Humans work endlessly for lifestyles that often increase stress rather than peace. People sacrifice time, health, emotional well-being for social status and consumption. Yet many still feel empty internally. Modern life creates endless comparison. And comparison fuels dissatisfaction continuously. Diogenes believed much of this suffering is unnecessary. Because humans confuse comfort with fulfillment, status with worth, stimulation with happiness. Part 9: The Value of Solitude. Diogenes spent much time alone. Not because he hated humanity entirely, but because solitude protects independence. A person constantly shaped by public opinion loses inner freedom. Modern people rarely experience true solitude anymore. Noise never stops. Notifications never stop. Distraction never stops. But solitude creates space for self-awareness. And perhaps this explains why silence feels uncomfortable. Because without distraction, humans confront themselves honestly. Part 10: Final Reflection. Diogenes believed civilization creates unnecessary suffering through endless artificial desire. Humans become psychologically trapped by status, possessions, validation, comfort, social expectation. And perhaps modern life proves his point repeatedly. People possess more convenience than ever before. Yet anxiety and dissatisfaction continue growing. Maybe freedom does not come from having more. Maybe it comes from needing less. Perhaps the freest human being is not the one who owns the most, but the one who can remain at peace with almost nothing.